After my husband's funeral, his brother gave me a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a single key and a note that read, "Don't trust your children. The truth is waiting." I stared at those words, my hands trembling as the weight of 43 years of marriage suddenly felt different. The man I thought I knew better than myself had left me a message from beyond the grave, warning me about the children we raised together. That brass key would unlock more than just a storage unit. It would unlock a truth that would shatter everything I believed about my family and force me to discover who I really was beneath 40 years of being diminished, dismissed, and slowly erased. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The cemetery was emptying when James pressed the envelope into my shaking hands. The ivory paper felt substantial, weighted with secrets I couldn't yet imagine. "Henry wanted you to have this," he whispered, his eyes avoiding mine, glancing instead toward the chapel where my children stood with the funeral director. "Open it when you're completely alone." My husband of 43 years was gone, and now his younger brother was delivering mysteries from beyond the grave. James's fingers hesitated on the envelope for a moment, as if releasing it would set something irreversible in motion. "Eleanor," he said, and something in his tone made me meet his gaze. He'd been weeping, but there was something else etched in his features. A warning. Fear. "Just remember, Henry loved you more than life itself." I waited until I was sitting in my sedan, hands still unsteady from the day's crushing weight. The parking lot was nearly deserted, just a few scattered vehicles under the steel November sky. Through the windshield, I could see Michael helping Jessica with her coat, the protective older brother as always. They appeared so normal, so appropriately grief-stricken. The envelope opened with a soft tear that seemed deafening in the silence. Inside was a single brass key, old-fashioned and weighty, attached to a small tag with a number 23 written in Henry's meticulous handwriting. But it was the note that made my world tilt. "My dearest Eleanor," it began, and I could hear his voice in those words. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone and James has kept his promise. I need you to know that everything I've done has been to protect you. Don't trust your children. I know how that sounds. But please, my love, trust me one final time. The truth is waiting in Unit 23 at Riverside Storage on Oak Avenue. James has the access code. What you find there will explain everything. I've watched them dismiss you, minimize you, treat you like you're somehow less than the extraordinary woman who raised them. You always made excuses for them, my generous, forgiving Eleanor. But I saw what you refused to see. They don't deserve the mother you've been." I looked back toward the chapel, where Michael was now checking his phone while Jessica spoke animatedly on hers. Even in grief they were elsewhere, handling business, managing things that apparently mattered more than this moment. "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you while I was alive." The letter concluded. "I was afraid you'd confront them, give them a chance to manipulate you. You always saw the best in them. It's time to see them clearly. All my love forever, Henry." I sat there gripping that key, feeling its edges press into my palm. 43 years of marriage, 2 children, a lifetime of memories. And now this cold piece of metal that promised to demolish everything I thought I knew. The Sunday dinners. 8 months earlier, our Sunday dinners were sacred tradition. The dining room would fill with the warmth of family and the aroma of Henry's legendary pot roast. Michael would arrive first, always punctual, with a bouquet of white roses. "For the most beautiful woman in Chicago," he'd say, kissing my cheek. Jessica would sweep in next with her husband, Richard, arms full of desserts, though she always brought her signature chocolate cake too. "Store-bought for backup, homemade with love," she'd laugh. The routine was as comfortable as my favorite armchair. Henry would take charge of the kitchen. Jessica would help me arrange my great-grandmother's china, and Michael would pour the wine, always serving me first. "Ladies before executives," he'd joke. At dinner, Michael would entertain us with corporate victories, and Jessica would share advertising campaigns. Henry would glow with pride, reaching over to squeeze my hand under the table. "Our children," his expression would say, "look what we created." These evenings felt like proof that every sacrifice had been worthwhile. We'd built something beautiful, something unbreakable. We did well, didn't we? He'd say as their cars disappeared down our tree-lined street. We did perfectly, I'd answer, believing it with every fiber of my being. The diagnosis. The diagnosis came on a Thursday. Lung cancer stage 4. The words hung in the air of Dr. Peterson's office like a death sentence. With aggressive treatment, perhaps 8 months, he'd said. Henry gripped my hand so tightly I thought my fingers might break. Michael and Jessica arrived within the hour, a united front of determination, already discussing specialists and experimental treatments. For a moment, I felt the strength of family surrounding us like armor. But that evening, after Henry had gone to bed exhausted, I found them clustered in his office over documents spread across his oak desk. We need to be realistic about the estate, Michael said, not noticing me in the doorway. The house alone is worth $3 million now. The stock portfolio is what, another 4? Jessica added, highlighting something with a decisive red stroke. And there's the lake house in Wisconsin. They hadn't asked how I was managing. They were dividing up his life like he was already gone. When they finally noticed me, Michael simply said, Mom, we're just being thorough. You're emotional right now, which is completely natural. Let us handle the financial complexities. The words stung like ice water, but I told myself it was their way of processing fear. The slow erasure. As Henry grew weaker, my children grew more controlling. Not with him but with me. It was a gradual erosion. They'd visit, sitting by his bedside sharing carefully selected memories. Dad, remember when you taught me to drive stick shift? Michael would reminisce, launching into stories as if I hadn't been there too, teaching patience and bandaging wounded pride. I'd stand in the doorway with Henry's medications, and Michael would simply extend his hand without looking, taking the pills while continuing his narrative. The medical team started directing their questions to him instead of me, even though I'd been managing Henry's care around the clock. Mr. Thompson, should we increase your husband's pain medication? They'd ask while I stood right there with the journal where I'd tracked every symptom, every dose, every response. One afternoon, I spent hours preparing Henry's favorite chicken soup, one of the few things he could still manage. I carried it upstairs, only to overhear Jessica on the phone in the hallway. Richard, Mom's just completely falling apart. She spent all day making soup when we have a refrigerator full of nutritional supplements. Thank God Michael and I can handle the important decisions. I stood frozen, holding that bowl of soup I'd made from pure love. That evening, when Henry weakly squeezed my hand and whispered, "Delicious soup, Eleanor. Tastes like happiness," I had to excuse myself so he wouldn't see my tears. In the bathroom mirror, I stared at my reflection. When had I become this shadow in my own life? The hospice meeting. The hospice meeting was my complete erasure. I arrived with my detailed journal, ready to share Henry's documented preferences, but Michael's hand covered mine. "Let me handle this, Mom." He turned to the team with his boardroom smile. "Mrs. Thompson is overwhelmed. Perhaps we should designate medical power of attorney to someone more capable of making objective decisions." Jessica leaned forward, her expression practiced. "Mom's always been overly emotional. Dad needs someone who can think rationally right now." "I cry because I'm losing my husband," I said, my voice weaker than I intended. "That doesn't mean I'm incapable of decisions." But Michael was prepared. "Just yesterday, Mom forgot Dad's evening medications. We found her in the garden planting flowers while Dad was upstairs suffering. The hospice nurse had already administered them." Protested. "I was planting his favorite daisies because the view from his window brings him joy." But my defense sounded feeble, even to me. That night, Michael had legal documents prepared. "Just sign here, Mom. It's for the best. You trust me, don't you?" My hand trembled as I signed away my role as Henry's wife, protector, and advocate. I had become officially irrelevant. After the funeral. The house felt like a mausoleum after the funeral. I found myself sleeping on Henry's side of the bed, wearing his old cardigan, desperate for a scent that was already disappearing. Michael had taken Henry's coin collection for proper valuation. Jessica had packed his books to donate appropriately, keeping the rare editions. But it was the basement that devastated me. I went looking for his old chess set, and instead found emptiness. They had cleared out his entire study. The desk he'd refinished himself, where he'd helped our children with homework, was gone. The bookshelf that held his philosophy texts in careful order had been stripped bare. I sat on the cold concrete floor and allowed myself to truly weep, soul-deep sobs that echoed off the empty walls. They had taken every piece of him they decided I didn't deserve to keep. That's when I discovered it. An old photograph of our wedding day, fallen behind where the filing cabinet had been. We looked so young, so certain that together we could weather anything. Holding that photograph, I wondered if I'd lost everything that mattered. The storage unit. 4 days later, I drove to Riverside Storage at 3 in the morning. The key turned smoothly in the lock of Unit 23. The fluorescent light flickered on, and I gasped. The unit was a museum of our life, the real one. The first box contained our original wedding silver, the set I thought we'd pawned to pay for Michael's MBA. "You wept that night," Henry had written on a note attached to the tissue paper. I couldn't bear to let them go. Another box held my grandmother's pearls, pieces Jessica had claimed were missing. Each was carefully preserved, each with a note. Jessica said these were outdated. "They're classic like you." But it was the manila folder marked truth that made me collapse to my knees. Inside were bank statements for an account in my name only, one Henry had been funding for 20 years. Eleanor's independence, the memos read, "for when she needs it." The balance was enough to start over, to never have to ask for anything again. Behind the statements was a folder of Henry's letters, documenting instances I'd dismissed. "Today," Michael told his colleagues, "you were just a substitute teacher. I've never been prouder of your career, my love. You shaped thousands of lives while I just managed money." Another read, "Jessica called you simple for being content with our life. She doesn't understand that contentment is wisdom. You knew what mattered." He had seen me drowning before I even realized I was in water. In a smaller box, I found copies of text messages between Michael and Jessica, sent just after Henry's diagnosis. "Mom's going to completely break down," Jessica had written. "We need to get everything transferred to our names before she does something irrational." Michael's response was worse. "Already working on it. Dad's too sick to interfere, and Mom will sign anything we put in front of her. She always has. The plan." I played the grieving widow flawlessly. When Michael called about settling the estate, I made small, helpless sounds of agreement. When Jessica suggested an assisted living facility, I nodded vaguely. "Something with full-time care available," she'd said, scrolling through her tablet. "Of course, sweetheart," I'd replied, my voice fragile and grateful. "You know what's best." Meanwhile, I met with Patricia Wells, an attorney James recommended. We discovered that Henry had restructured everything 8 months ago. The house, the investments, everything was in an irrevocable trust. The Eleanor Thompson Living Trust controlled it all. When Michael mentioned having me declared incompetent, "For your own protection, Mom," I recorded it. When Jessica brought documents giving her power of attorney over my finances, I photographed every page before signing with a shaking hand, knowing the signatures were meaningless. They interpreted my silence as surrender. They had no idea it was strategy. The revelation. The estate reading was held in James's office. Michael and Jessica arrived with their attorneys, confident. They barely acknowledged me as I shuffled in, playing the confused widow perfectly. "Before we begin," Michael announced, "we've prepared a comprehensive care plan for Mom." "How considerate," James said dryly. "Shall we proceed with your father's actual intentions?" He began to read. "Henry's estate has been placed in an irrevocable trust, the Eleanor Thompson Living Trust. All assets are under Mrs. Thompson's sole control." Michael's face drained of color. "What trust?" Jessica shot to her feet. "This is absurd. Mom can't manage this. Dad must have been medicated when he signed this. Actually, James said, producing a laptop. Henry insisted on video documentation. Henry's face filled the screen, gaunt but lucid. If you're watching this, it means my children are attempting to steal everything from their mother. This trust ensures she maintains the dignity and independence they've been systematically destroying. The room fell silent. Then I finally spoke, my voice clear and strong. Confused. Like when I managed our household for 43 years. Overwhelmed. Like when I raised you both while working full-time. I placed my phone on the table. Their recorded voices filled the room, plotting to manage me, to institutionalize me. Your father knew exactly who you'd become, I said, rising to my full height. He watched you erase me. He documented every moment. Mom, we were trying to help you, Michael whispered. No, I said firmly. You were protecting your inheritance. James then revealed the final documents. Henry had also established separate education trusts for Michael and Jessica. Hope flickered in their eyes. James handed them each a sealed envelope. I watched their faces crumble as they read the conditions. 1,000 hours of volunteer work, Michael said, his voice hollow. At inner-city schools. Teaching. Same for me, Jessica whispered. And a course on elder care ethics, plus a 20,000-word essay on the value of educators in society. Upon successful completion, James continued, you'll each receive $75,000, a teacher's annual salary. Your father wanted you to understand what that represents. That's all. Michael's voice cracked. And the house, I added, pulling out a press release I'd prepared. It's being established as the Thompson House for Educators, a residence for retired teachers facing financial hardship. The announcement runs in tomorrow's Tribune. Everyone will celebrate Henry's legacy, while you live with your choices. Their attorney threatened to contest. Please try, I said calmly. I have recordings. Have messages. I have witnesses. Would you like to present all of that in court? I stood to leave. Your father didn't just protect me. He ensured that every time you try to diminish what I was, you'll remember that it meant everything to him. And now, it's everything you'll never possess. The new beginning. 6 months later, I stand in Henry's restored study. The desk sits exactly where he placed it. On it is his final unfinished project, a jewelry box for our anniversary. I run my fingers over the smooth mahogany. His greatest gift wasn't the money. It was seeing me clearly when everyone else had stopped looking. The Thompson House for Educators welcomes its first residents next month. Michael has completed 400 hours at the school. He calls sometimes, with genuine bewilderment in his voice. Mom, there's this student. How did you handle seeing potential trapped by poverty? How did you not let it destroy your heart? You let it break your heart, I tell him. Then you help anyway. Jessica's essays have started arriving. The 5th one made me weep. I watched my mother disappear. Asterisk, she wrote. Not suddenly, but in small surrenders I mistook for simplicity. I see now that she was never small. We just stopped seeing her magnitude. Beginning. It's a beginning. I keep Henry's last letter in the jewelry box, which I completed with my own hands. Eleanor, it says, you were never just anything. You were everything. Don't let them make you invisible. You're the most extraordinary thing that ever happened to me. The afternoon light streams through the study window, golden and warm. I'm not the woman who was erased. I'm not even the woman who fought back. I'm the woman who remembered who she was all along. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember their own worth. Your support means everything to creators like us who believe every story deserves to be heard.